The Great Gatsby, a story of extravagance and love and anguish and fighting and death and more death and... Now I know what you're thinking of when you think of The Great Gatsby. And that's a great novel, that's not really the point I'm trying to get at here. Now, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald is a relatively short book, but there's a lot to understand. Before we get into the characters, plot twists, and themes, let's talk about the setting. The setting of The Great Gatsby takes place during the 1920s during the Jazz era, and it's also the time when the Prohibition was first passed, which illegalized the sale of alcohol. However, this just resulted in underground businesses and crime, which riddled the streets of New York, specifically the West and East Egg, where most of the characters in this story reside. Jay Gatsby. Where do we even start with a guy like Jay Gatsby? Jay Gatsby, aka Jimmy, aka James Gatz, is basically as Midwestern as it gets. He's an Oxford man too, and he sailed all across the world in his boat with his bestie, Dan, until he went to the military where his life was changed because he met a girl. Daisy Buchanan is one of the more static characters in the story who doesn't really change her materialistic mindset. She's the cousin of Nick Carraway, one of the most dynamic characters in the book, who eventually becomes a narrator as he recounts his time spent in the West Egg. She met Gatsby about 5 years ago while Gatsby was stationed in the military, and they both fell in love. However, she decided to marry somebody else, Tom Buchanan. Tom Buchanan is the husband of Daisy Buchanan, and he's also a former football player who's known as one of the best in the league. He does, however, have some infidelity issues, and we eventually find out that he has a mistress named Myrtle, who eventually gets killed by... I'll take it from you. Now, this whole dilemma basically unfolds as Tom and Gatsby battle it out for Daisy's heart, even though I think Madonna best summarized Daisy's worldview. You know that we are living in a material world, and I am a material girl. The theme of unrequited love breeding doubt is one that every character in the story experiences, and eventually becomes an overarching theme because it leaves us asking a lot of questions. Are Jordan and Nick compatible if we don't know if Jordan loves Nick the same way he does she? Are Tom and Daisy compatible if we know that Tom struggles with infidelity and Daisy's materialistic? Does Gatsby love the Daisy he just met or the Daisy he met 5 years ago? And is Daisy even in love with the idea of love itself, or is she just in love with the things that love brings because she's so materialistic, and being that both of her love interests are from old money or new money? It's a theme that really drives the plot of the story and eventually creates quite the conundrum. So, true, Nisa. We also see this theme, or should I say conflict, of immorality versus immortality. Now, being that the book takes place in the 1920s, a time during the Jazz era and the Prohibition, we see a lot of partying going on, a lot of drinking, a lot of violence, a lot of smoking, and that's just because people are living like there's no tomorrow, and we're trying to reconcile that with this whole idea of keeping a moral stance. And one of the particular ways that we see this is through symbolism in the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg, who is basically looking down the Valley of Ashes and wondering, where did we go wrong? Now that is just two of the many, many, many themes that go on in this novel, but we hope that this crash course provided you a good lowdown on this book, gave you some static characters, some dynamic characters, some plot twists, and some themes, but if you really want to get to know more about F. Scott Fitzgerald, you're just going to have to read the book for yourself.